That sounds about right.
All right, you guys want to get rolling?
Hit it.
All right, dude. Well, it's already live, so
Beautiful.
all those horrible things that you just said, we've got them on camera and on audio. So
That's what it is. No turning back.
prepare to be fired, buddy. Well, thanks for joining me. Mason, thanks for joining us, dude.
Yeah, dude.
I wouldn't miss
Appreciate it.
Especially with that cool shirt you got on, man.
Thanks.
How
Yeah,
many of
you
those
thought
shit-
it was mine, but it's called Compound. They're out of Sarasota.
Oh,
I should get sponsored by them.
You should.
I basically I think I've worn a Compound shirt maybe like a third of all the podcasts that I've done so far.
Yeah.
I mean, I just like it with the Florida flag. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
How many do you own? Compound shirts.
Compound shirts. I have the bird shirt. I think I have like 7 Compound
He's
shirts.
actually like an 80-year-old man. He just goes in there to the store and buys
Only compound
one for every
shirts.
a week.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm totally there. I understand. Like, probably 3 years ago, I started to realize why dads do what they do with all the stuff. Like, I just buy the clothes that I like, and then I just wear them for 2 or 3 years until like they're done.
Yeah. I'm
You
with
know, like I don't.
Yeah.
It's what I do now. it's where I'm at. Got a baby on the way, and that's that's all I can.
How
fucking
long
do.
until the New Balances?
Dude, it's I
1
don't
year,
think
2
the
year?
New Balances are happening.
First
The-
off, there's nothing wrong with some New Balances.
Well, whatever you got on right now, those are kind of the equivalent of New Balances.
These are going to be the New Balances. I got these shoes called Ons.
Oh, I know
and-
about them.
Yeah, and my friend Jesse's like, yeah, you got croutons on your feet. These are going to be these are the next New Balances.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is what I'm going to be wearing for probably the next 30 to 40 years, and this is what my kids will make fun of me
Just the
for.
ons. That's it.
Yeah,
Do they make sandals too?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't know. But why the hell are we here today?
Listen, I was at the gym about a month ago.
Yeah, all right. Let's take it back to the beginning.
Listen, and I see Mason, and I say, Mason, can you spot me on the bench press? And he's like the good friend Mason is, he says, of course I can. And
A lot of weight on this bench press.
there wasn't that much weight. It was not much at all.
135.
There was more than 135. So I asked Mason to spot me, and he does. And we start talking, and I ask him because Mason posts religiously your books, your rating scale of the books that you read. So we get into this long stoicism conversation, and now here we are.
Yeah, and kind of any chance that Mason gets to put his nuts anywhere near another guy's face, he's like, yes, I'm in.
Well, Matt Reed can do no wrong in my book.
Thanks, Mason.
Yeah, I've always been loyal to Matt Reed to a fault. Defended him too many times. Turned the blind eye to bad performances at work and
It's unbelievable.
stuff.
No, it's believable. You're
Actually,
a horrible performer,
Probably
actually.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all worked together at one point.
We did. Yep.
Do you remember how we first met? Like the first like interaction we had as you being my boss. Do you remember?
I don't remember that actually, and I'm kind of worried about it now.
I won't give the specific verbiage, but basically you were like, "Hey, Chris, I'm really thirsty.
Yep.
Could you go fill up my water?" And I was like, "No, dude, are you kidding?" And you're like, come on, dude, just fill this up." And I was like, "No, fuck you, man. I'm not filling this up." And you're like, "Fine, I'll go fill up my own water." You got a lot of people to fill up your water.
I know. It's just a good manager.
I think I fill up your water.
Yeah, you filled up my water a lot.
Fucking bitch.
That's why Matt
Dude,
got the best shifts.
You talk. I got the worst shift with both of you. We were all the worst
you
shifts.
got to. Well, yeah, that's true. Oh man.
Yeah,
That
that's
night-
where we bonded, was the night shift.
Yeah.
There's something about running through the, tough times that make it a little bit more bearable.
Yeah. You remember that one night? I don't know if you were there, but there was one night where we had fucking no cars, and we were legit like running triangles.
Oh, I was there.
Were you there
I
that
was the
night?
manager. Yeah.
Dude, that was nuts.
Yeah.
That was
You know-
wild. For like probably 2 full hours, we ran back and forth, like ran to the back, get a clean car,
Yeah.
drive it up, run over to the returns, drive it
Zipping
over,
around. Yeah.
run
you know,
back.
Yep.
You know what my favorite memory was for that though, when we didn't have the cars, was we had 10 like convertible deals coming in the night. In Clayton, you guys remember Clayton?
Oh
right?
yeah.
Clayton got all 10 people. Like every time he went to help out a customer, he got everyone that had a convertible res, and he just looked at me every time, and I had to go apologize. I mean, I probably gave away like $5,000, but I just basically was like, hey, take whatever car you want, it's free. But,
Yeah, dude, that's all you could do those nights.
Yeah.
You know the best part about those? When I closed up, there's like 5 Mustangs just like parked, convertibles. I'm like, where were these?
Yeah, that's the way it goes. Is what happens.
Terrible on my management staff for not knowing that, but besides the point. But yeah, no, Matt was in the gym for 10 minutes, and I talked to him for 50 minutes about Stoicism and American history.
I think I got 2 lifts in total.
He didn't at all.
But it was fine though, because a lot of people won't.
You got a
talk
mental
about these
workout.
things. Yeah, I did get a mental workout. 100%. It was a
More
mental
like,
workout.
dude, hey, good to see you, man. I'll talk to you later. When do you come in the gym usually, Mason? Oh, usually come in the morning. All right, cool. In the afternoon every day. Never seen him again.
I haven't been in a while. I haven't been in town for a few weeks. So I haven't worked out since that day. I think I've had 1 workout.
Dude, Matt's been avoiding everybody.
I don't want to see any of you.
We were supposed to do this podcast 2 weeks ago. He fucking mails anthrax to his grandpa and
Oh my god.
fucking postpones this whole meeting. We've been waiting for this whole time.
I'm sorry, boys.
That's fucking rude, dude.
Now I'm here, and now we can do this.
So, I guess this is another episode of Matt and Chris's book club.
Welcome to the book club, Mason.
So, today, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about First Principles by Thomas E. Ricks. So, yeah, we got into this because you actually recommended this.
Oh yeah, that's a 10 out of 10 for me.
Dude, this is a pretty sweet book.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I'm maybe 2/3 of the way through this thing, but this actually changed my perspective on, like, the founding fathers and really, like, all of this stuff, how it came to be. It's like a way different take on any of this stuff than I've heard. It really looks at, like, the mindset and, like, kind of their direct writings and actions that led to, like, the founding of the country.
Well, it's what influences them. So it's, you know, when we get taught in school, like what do we get told? This happened in 1776. Then the Constitution happened in 1789. Washington was first president, then he died. John Adams then became president, not a popular president. Well, it's okay. John Adams did a crap ton of stuff 30 years before that. And same with Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. They did all this stuff, but it's ultimately, they weren't just born and came up with this great idea that became the United States. It was, okay, what influenced them? What was their model for it? And that's what I think I liked about it the most, was because I'm also a big Roman history person. So it was kind of like speaking just straight to me in a way.
Yeah.
That's why I liked it so much.
Yeah, dude, it was pretty cool to see, like, how much influence that had on them. I didn't know that, like, back in the 1700s and stuff, all these people were, like, all of their writings, they cited Romans and Greeks and all this kind of stuff. Like, I don't fucking know any Romans or Greeks. You know, like, Caesar, you know, Aristotle, Plato, and maybe Pythagoras. And that's, like, pretty much it now. And now we think, like, we're really smart and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, shit, all these people in the 1700s, like, could, like, easily cite all of this different stuff.
You know, not to jump ahead, but I think it was Jefferson in this book. He talks about him being 14 years old and, like, already being able to quote, like, all these Stoics and these old Romans. And I just think about in today's world and how ignorant I am, and probably most people are, to, like, how big of a genius are these people that
their education was different.
Yeah.
So mathematics, for instance, wasn't a huge focus for them. So if they had a classical education, it was literally what we would deem the classics. So they studied Roman history, Greek history, you know, the history of the Bible, all this stuff. It was very religious time. But this is also during the Enlightenment period. So you had a lot of new age thinking and a lot of, you know, classical liberalism now coming to the forefront. So when you actually look into it more, maybe Jefferson, when he wrote the Declaration, wasn't actually the original thought for him. You had a lot of influences that came about that.
Sure. But that's kind of like, it's almost like everything, though, right? You look at good artists, you look at good musicians, you look at like good writers, all that kind of stuff. They are just taking from the past. That was one realization I kind of had with all this shit too is, man, we think that so much of this stuff is novel and that, no time before us has ever gone through this. But people have literally been going through these same struggles and these same problems and same thought processes for at least thousands of years that we know of. If they were going through this in Greece and then they were going through it in Rome, enough so much that they had all this documentation that the people that built our country could go back and cite this stuff fucking 1,700 plus years later. Like, there must have been a lot of shit going on in Rome that people were like keeping track of if they can go back and get this.
I'm glad you brought that up, because to really understand why the country it was and the things that they were really concerned about, you have to know what happened in Rome, ancient Rome, and why the Republic fell apart. So, Rome, the city, when it was founded, it was just the city. It was just that little area in Italy. Well, fast forward, say over 200-year span, 300-year span, whatever, they started conquering other Italian tribes. Now, these Italian tribes weren't Romans. They were still considered allies. So they had a complicated web of alliances, tributes. Those people couldn't vote in the Roman elections. And when I say elections, it's not how we think of our elections today. Not every vote counted. It was based on, kind of your class. So like the patricians, the senatorial class, obviously their vote had a lot more weight. Well, then they fought the other Mediterranean superpower, the city-state called Carthage, which was all about trade. They had a trade network that was basically the entire Western Mediterranean and controlled half of Sicily, Corsica, and a bunch of islands in the Western Mediterranean. And
where is Carthage?
It would be modern-day Tunisia. So if you take Sicily...
absolutely.
so if you take Sicily and like draw a diagonal to North Africa, that's where it would be.
Oh.
So it was a maritime power.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So once Rome started taking more over Italy, right? And I'm jumping backwards a little bit too. Before Carthage and Rome fought each other, you actually had this guy named Pyrrhus of Epirus, which is Western, like Greece nowadays. And the Greeks had colonies in southern Italy. Well, they were worried about Roman power. They called him over. Every Greek at that time now wanted to be the next Alexander the Great. So he comes over, fights the Romans. He beats them in 2 battles, tries bribing them for peace. Well, the Romans at the time put such an emphasis on virtue and honor and service to the state, to the Republic, that they basically said, I would rather be a poor person. Like the guy he tried bribing said, I'd rather be a poor, free person with my honor in my city than be a slave to a tyrant.
Yeah.
So, well, the reason why I say this, though, is because if you fast forward to the end of the Republic, you had people that were just doing whatever they could to get rich, for power, all this stuff. So the reason why that is because Italy at the time was poor. Like, they didn't have gold, they didn't have resources or anything like that. What the Romans did was they actually lost a lot of battles, but they would just keep fighting the war till they won.
Because they had the resources to do it?
They had the manpower.
Okay.
The man reserves. So after they beat Pyrrhus of Epirus, next big clash is with Carthage. They fought Carthage for the first Punic War was for 30 years.
Wow.
So, and we think like, and nowadays say like 50,000 people die, right? We think, oh, that's really bad. Well, this is over 2,000 years ago where hundreds of thousands of people died in this war over a 30-year period. So they were killing each other.
And if you look at the general population too, the overall size the amount of people on the earth was way smaller. So that's like an even bigger impact.
Yeah.
Wow.
So after they beat Carthage in that first war, and because that war lasted so long, you have multiple generations now that are fighting it. Well, Carthage, part of that peace treaty was that they lost all their claims on Sicily. They lost a lot of islands. They're not allowed to have a navy anymore. They have to pay basically war.
Like reparations?
Yeah, reparation. Right? They gave them a lot of things. Well, what Carthage ended up doing was they started expanding in Spain. And one of the guys who ends up taking over the army in Spain is this guy named Hannibal, who actually got me my job, which I brought him up in an interview.
Yeah, I remember you were telling me the interview answer. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, so he's the guy that, when you're taught in school, he marched from Spain over the Alps into Italy and started fighting the Romans in Italy. Well, everyone thinks, oh, he crossed the Alps he had elephants with him. Well, what Hannibal did, though, was his army was made up of people from North Africa, Spain, Gaul, so modern France, and then he ended up getting some Italians to join him too. So you had a bunch of because his strategy was in the first war, Rome never had to fight on their own soil, and because Rome's control of Italy was based on this network of allies and everything, if he could show that he could beat the Romans in Italy, it would break up all these alliances. Well, he won a lot of, honestly, it's probably like some of the best tactician battles ever fought. Like the battle at Cheine, he wiped out 70,000 Romans in a battle.
Whoa. And
the long-winded answer, but Washington was influenced by a guy named Fabian, who got he was charged with fighting Hannibal, and he came up with what we call now the Fabian strategy, which was basically, I'm just going to contain him. I'm not going to fight him in a pitched battle. If he sends people out to get food, I'm going to attack those people, but I'm not doing a decisive battle, which Washington, after the Battle of New York, which they got trounced, he didn't fight a major battle for a long time. He just did little skirmishes and basically kept the people in the war until the British were like, yo, this isn't even worth it anymore.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you know what I thought was cool about that too is not even just the mindset that you can see that they picked up from ancient Rome and all these different things, but it really is those kinds of lessons. So you always hear George Washington was a terrible general and all this kind of stuff. I don't know if you guys ever heard people say that oh, he really wasn't that good of a military general. I don't know. I've heard that a bunch of times, but after hearing this and then seeing okay, we have been fucking slaughtered each time we go into these heavy battles with the British. That's what I know. That's my historical past. That's what Congress wants. That's what all these people want, is us to have this big grand battle and all this stuff. But after getting smashed, he turned back to these lessons of ancient Rome and takes this different approach. And he's under pretty heavy scrutiny from a lot of people for taking this approach because they think it's weak, they think it's indirect, they think it's a losing thing, and he's really scrambling. But it is kind of cool to see not just what gets written in the Declaration of Independence or what gets written in the Constitution be influenced by this stuff, but literally the way that he had to change his war strategy in order to preserve this super fragile fucking thing that was the birth of America. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, which I think also too, to his credit, which another thing when we look at Washington or any of the founding fathers, we look at when they're older, right? When we see his picture on the dollar bill when he was president. Well, Washington, when he became the general, was, I think, he was 43.
Yeah.
So he's not an old guy at all. Which the other thing too, which makes it crazier about it, is that he was totally unqualified for leading an army. I mean, which it tells a sad excuse of how prepared, the colonies were for any sort of war was that Washington was the best person at the time. I mean, there's other leaders, but he actually had battlefield experience, but he only led a regiment, which is about 900 men during the French and Indian War. But he never led when he took over at Boston, I think there was 12,000 troops there.
Maybe I read this wrong. There was during when we gained our independence, there was only a little over 1 million people in the Americas. Is that true?
3 million.
3 million. Okay.
3 million.
Still,
and,
compared to today, that's tiny.
And 500,000 of them were slaves. Yeah. So,
really?
Yeah, that would go into that population.
Wow.
They still did that in the census.
It's unbelievable.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah. Which they're not gonna probably have them fight too much. I mean, there were African Americans that fought, but they're not gonna. Washington wasn't gonna take any of his slaves to go fight.
Yeah. That's how it was back then. It's pretty fucked up. It's kind of one of the parts of this book too that I didn't even realize how much slavery was woven into just the creation of the country and everything. It's pretty dark, but it's a fucking matter of fact of the situation, and it's part of what shaped some of this stuff today.
Yeah. I mean, at the time in 76, I'm pretty sure every colony had slavery was legal, but the majority of the slaves were in Virginia and North Carolina. And then fast forward to the Constitution, the convention, that was basically a taboo subject. And you had some of the slave states that were saying, if you guys are going to press this issue, we're not going to join.
Yeah.
And then even once it happened, Ben Franklin, right before he died, he voiced, for abolition. And you had representatives of some of the slave states that are saying, what the hell? We would not have joined if you brought up slavery.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it was just a series of compromises, which ended up leading to the Civil War.
Yeah.
But at the forefront of everything in the Civil War, and this would be a debate till the end of time, probably, as long as we're a country, but at the core of everything with the Civil War, slavery is always a central piece.
Yeah. I've talked to people that are well, it really wasn't about that. It's
the problem with that though is that you do have people like Jefferson, who Jefferson was kind of the romantic founding father. He was a great writer. He never gave any speeches or anything like that. He's very awesome with writing. He's a man of he was the idealist. But Jefferson, before he became president, was the states' rights guys. He was the state right guy. He was saying the federal government shouldn't have as much power. The states need to decide, what is going to impact the people that live in the states because they're closer to the people. So
he didn't want the centralized government then, or he was an anti-federalist.
Yeah. He called himself a Republican, but nowadays it was a different type of Republican because it was a Jeffersonian is the modern day what people call it now.
Yeah, didn't it become Federalists versus the Jeffersonians? Oh,
yeah,
nice, God. Dude. Right on my fucking
just make you nervous,
computer, dude. You're gonna ruin the whole fucking show. All right, dude. Here.
Pause it up.
No, we're still rolling.
Hey, grab me a beer.
You want a beer?
Yeah, grab.
Don't spill it though.
Oh, don't watch. And get me a beer too. Why not? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I want a Yingling too. Thanks. You can edit that out, right?
No, we're not. We don't need to edit it out. The world needs to know what we're dealing with.
Well,
here.
now that he's gone, but
Matt, now that you're gone. Yeah, so. Let me fucking pull up some of these chapters. Maybe this will get my fucking brain going because I was kind of surprised about the way that some of this stuff came about. I always liked Jefferson. He's kind of I don't know. In my mind, he's like my favorite guy, I think. But this book definitely, don't step on that wire. This book definitely sheds a different light on that.
He's kind of
at least as far as I've read. I just like that. I do like the more like idealistic stuff, all of that kind of stuff. And I think, he's got that quote, like, I like the dreams of the future better than the tales of the past, whatever it is.
The problem with Jefferson, though, is some of the stuff he said was like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about
really?
Right now? Yeah, like
So I can relate to that, though, it's, that might be why I like Jefferson.
Well, Jefferson, I mean, you basically have to take what he said at the time in his life. He was like the revolutionary guy at all times. Like he has a quote, I don't think it's in that book, but he has a quote that says something like, every generation should come up with its own laws.
Jefferson?
So, yeah. But then fast forward, he is kind of one of what we would call today a constitutionalist, saying like,
we need to stick to these.
Don't advert from the Constitution, like, at all. But it's, okay, you said this like 20 years ago that, every generation should come up with their own laws, which would probably lead to anarchy.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I'm torn between both of those because I feel the same way, but also my thought on that kind of changes from day to day, right? Like, as I'm in a position, I think a certain way, and then as you learn more and you grow, like, your opinions do change. At least like I can relate to that. It seems like the others were more like steadfast in their approach. Like Washington was like, seemed like, as far as I can tell, like a good solid person. He was like very like focused on whatever he was doing and didn't stray from that. Like Madison seems like he was just a fucking like political.
Madison's a genius,
dude. I did not know anything about him.
Madison's probably the best as far as like a political science thing. As far as I know, he's probably the best one in American history.
What was cool about him reading was like the fact that he knew all of this stuff about ancient Rome, ancient Greece, all these different things, the way their politics worked, what worked, what didn't work. But then the thing I actually kind of like respected about what he did that was different was he didn't just keep going back to that same old thing of like, well, it's been done here, so we must do this and we must do that. It was like, all right, we know all these things that work and what doesn't work. We really know what doesn't work. Like, how do we actually move this thing forward and create something entirely new that's never been done before? That was really impressive to see him bring, like, I don't know, thousands of years of like learning and writing all together and come up with something like the Constitution.
Well, what I really liked about it was, on that, probably what the chapter you're referring to was Madison literally, and Jefferson was overseas, right? He's an ambassador, I believe, to France at the time. He is begging Jefferson to send him every single book on these topics, and he just locked himself up in his house for however many long and just read as much as he could on the topic. So it's not like they went in gung-ho, but also it's not like, oh, let's do this and, all this stuff. So it's and I think this is just on like a personal, something that just frustrates me more than anything. Cause I mean, even me, like I'm a big history person and I didn't really know everything that there is to know about the founding or anything like that. But I think, the average person doesn't understand how much work went into and why this system was set up how it was, because they studied why past republics fell and why they led to civil war or anarchy or monarchy or tyranny and all that jazz.
Yeah. It's pretty cool that somebody would think like that, Like, all right, well, we don't know how to move forward. Let's look at what didn't work in the past, but then roll it out on a fucking scale to build a country.
Yeah. Do you think that's why Washington placed so much emphasis on virtue is because that was something that held strong.
I think they were all obsessed with it in a way. I mean, if you hear any of them in all the letters that they write, they always bring up virtue.
Yeah.
They bring up virtue, but virtue to them is different than what we deem virtue. I mean, virtue to them was kind of doing public good. And then there's like, there's like Stoicism virtue, which is, there's like the tenets of that, and that probably influenced them a little bit. I mean, how could it not? But it's virtue is something important, but virtue doesn't run a government though. Yeah. That's the only downside.
Well, that's what they realized was kind of like the limitations, right? So that was where they went, they did the declaration, they had the war, they started to put the Constitution together, but they had the what are they? The Articles
of Confederation.
Articles of Confederation. And as they went through some of this stuff, a lot of the articles, according to this book, it was all really based on like virtue and people's being good and doing good and kind of relying on that. And then they kind of hit like almost a breaking point of what that would really get you, like they kind of, even George Washington wrote it. He's like, there's only so far that we can really rely on human virtue and the goodness of people to do the right thing and steer this thing in the right direction that would actually help this country like survive and thrive. I don't know. It was kind of cool to see that realization of like, we have to embed human nature into this like foundation in order for this to work and scale.
Well, that's kind of when you say that the virtue kind of set the cement of the foundation, because then I know towards the end of the book how they Rex talks about how more or less this whole thing, America is an experiment and it's ever changing and we need to change with it. So that's great that was there in the beginning, and I think it was the foundation, but to see these guys push it forward and evolve is pretty wild.
Yeah.
I mean, for their time, they were the radicals. I mean, this was it's called a revolution for a reason. This was very radical thinking, and the person I don't think, I mean, all four of them had played enormous parts with the founding of the country and everything, especially the first three, and then you throw in a lot of others like Benjamin Franklin, for instance. But Washington is like, in the pantheon, he's Zeus by a lot. And I think that people don't really understand that he was truly indispensable in the beginning. This whole thing wasn't going to work because when you get into the I mean, let's be real, Washington was ambitious. He would not have gone as far as he was if he wasn't.
Sure.
But he was definitely, kind of like the Teddy Roosevelt saying, speak softly, carry a big stick. Yeah. And by him stepping up to be president and some of the decisions that he made, such as not getting us in the European War, which that's a whole nother segment we can really talk about, is what's going on over there then that led to the rise of Napoleon. But Washington stepping down after the second term, which they basically begged him to join or to stay on as president, because that's when the partisan party started to start. By him stepping down after the second term is basically saying, this needs to work without me. And that's why he retired. And plus I think with him, he was getting older, and he was kind of seeing like, don't want to do this. Like, and plus, if you look at his career too, he's made kind of the Giving Up Power Act was like his calling card. Mm-hmm. He wanted to be Cincinnatus, which is another Roman legend, which who knows if that guy even existed.
So who was Cincinnatus? I forget what the
So with him, Cincinnatus this is before Rome became an empire and all this stuff. So when it's still really small city, part of in the Republic, if they were faced with a really grave emergency, they would assign a dictator. Well, Cincinnatus was on his little farm, and they said, hey, we're under attack. we've named you as dictator to defend the republic. And when you get dictator, everything else is suspended. And, you have unlimited power, control of all the armies. So he defeats the enemy in supposedly 2 weeks, and they set up 6-month terms as a dictator. Well, after he defeats the enemy, saves the city, turns over power, gives up the sword, and just goes back to his farm. So that's the Cincinnatus model. And Washington, that's something that he is considered. He's the American Cincinnatus or the American Cato, and we can talk about my boy Cato. But
let's talk about your boy Cato.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. The whole play deal.
Yeah,
he'd be having his troops do the Cato play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we were talking about Rome, right? And so Rome, after they fought Carthage in the Punic War, well, when they defeated Hannibal, right, they took over almost all of Carthage's overseas territories, which was basically modern-day Spain. And so they now basically control all of Western Mediterranean, and Carthage is now a subject state to them. So they have to pay them a treaty. If Rome says, give us troops, they have to give them troops. They can't do anything without Rome giving them the thumbs up. Well, fast forward over the next 50 years, Rome just explodes. They conquer most of Greece. They do Western Turkey. They end up conquering Carthage completely and just wiping it off the map. And they start expanding a lot more. Well, the Republic wasn't made to really oversee, control a big empire like that. And now you have a lot of money being pumped in to the Republic. So you have senators after their consuls and going overseas and being governors, and they just start draining the province that they're for money. And then they're going back home and bribing the voters to win elections. So
sounds oddly reminiscent of some things that may be happening right now.
Yes.
The other thing too, which there's a lot of things that led up to the fall of the Republic, but everyone agrees that it starts with the Gracchi brothers, which they see this corruption start, and they start doing things such as land reform. So you have the Roman soldier had to own a certain amount of land. Well, if they're going overseas to fight in, say, Spain or in Greece or whatever, their farm is not going to be able to be run. So when they get home, their land's worthless. So what do? They sell it to some rich senator who stays home. When they go on campaign, they kill all the men, enslave all the people. They capture a lot of slaves. So these rich people that have these plantations, they have slaves working it. The actual Roman citizens don't have jobs. So
wait, hold on. Say this again. So
the Roman law was to serve in the army, to serve in the legion, you had to own a certain amount of land. So it was all landowners. So when you're fighting for the Republic, you're fighting for your land. You're fighting for your home.
So that way, for those type of people, there was an actual reason more than just money to be fighting. That's where you kind of pump in this virtue side of things. But it's kind of like a practical thing too.
Yeah. So that goes back to, fast backward, say 200 years when Pyrrhus was fighting the Romans. He tried bribing them, which was normal for Greeks to do to each other. And that Roman aristocrat was like, I'd rather be poor and free in my own country than a slave to a tyrant. Well, because you have so many Romans that, are overseas losing their lands and that they can't pass any sort of land reform, the Gracchi brothers, long story short, they both get assassinated, and they are what we would call populist politicians. And the problem with that, though, is that because they were rattling up the mob, per se, a lot of the elite class in Rome thought that they were trying to take power, and subvert the Republic. Well, fast forward another 30 years, Rome is getting their asses kicked in a couple wars all at the same time. They're fighting like 3 major wars at the same time. So they pass, this guy named Marius passes he gets through a reform that eliminates the land qualification. The problem with that, though, is you now have these soldiers that are no longer loyal to the power of the Republic and the Senate. They're now loyal to the commander of that army that's going to be able to get them the most loot. So
okay, so you basically take an entire population of people that are fighting for their land and either slowly or quickly, however fast it was, turn them into like a legion of mercenaries, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's now what we would call a professional army. Like they're soldiers now full time. So, but now you have rivals that become commanders that are now trying to enrich themselves to pay their soldiers. And then part of the deals that they would offer these soldiers was when they retired was, I'll pass legislation for you to get land, your own land. So you have, say, poor people that are living in the streets of Rome sign up for legions like, all right, I'm going to get 20 acres when I'm done.
So is it kind of like, all right, you can give up your land now, like you can sell it now, but we'll give it to you later, or they had no land, in order to fight to get around like the loophole, they're basically doing it in reverse.
The reform was to eliminate the land qualification.
But it was like eliminate the land qualification so you can get more people in the army to fight all 3. But then from there, it was like a reverse where it's like, hey, come fight in the army and we'll give you X amount of land.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you had a general, right, say they weren't really popular in the Senate where they couldn't get a land bill passed for the veterans, that general could then go to his troops and say, hey, these people aren't going to let you have land, or they're not going to pay you your pension. What do those soldiers do? That's when you start seeing commanders march on Rome itself. Julius Caesar wasn't the first one to do it. It was this guy named Sulla who did it. But it created and once he did it, he eliminated his political enemies. It was like a whole thing. So that's where like people like Cato, Julius Caesar, Pompey the Great, Cicero, that's the period that they grew up in. Was you had a guy who seized control of the state because his soldiers, their fate was tied to their commander, no longer to the state itself. So he tried, Sulla, when he stepped down and then he died right after, he tried fixing it so that no one could do what he did. But fast forward a generation, I mean, it's exactly what Julius Caesar did. But Cato comes into play because it's kind of important to look past like the mythology of him and actually, you know, he was a man and I think what Washington and some of the founders, that they looked at the mythology of him, and that's why he was such an inspiration.
Sure.
But basically, long story short on him was he was one of the first Romans who really embraced like a Stoic mindset. He's one of the most famous Stoics. He didn't write anything down, but his whole thing was how I act. So he would walk barefoot, like kind of a weird guy, but he would defend an issue and filibuster and all this stuff in the Senate just to, you know, what he deemed as protecting the Republic. So like he didn't trust Julius Caesar, for instance, when Julius Caesar was on his rise. So anything that Julius Caesar proposed, even if it was a really good idea,
he just shot it down.
He shot it down because he knew that Julius Caesar had bigger ambitions. So it was kind of one of those, and that's the problem though I have with Cato in a way, because there was serious issues that they needed to solve, but he was so like unbending on his point that it wouldn't solve it.
Well, you see that today. And it's like, I mean, it seems like that's where both sides are at in a lot of ways. But it seems like everybody's really fucking pissed and rigid, but they don't know why. They're kind of like pissed and rigid because somebody else kind of told them to be. And then if you really like get into their ideas and thoughts, they're like, yeah, I I believe A is B and B is A. Yeah, and there's like really no problem with that. And you're like, do you see how that contradicts? Like, no, I'm not interested.
Well, I think the important thing to understand too is like in ancient Rome, and even in the founding, it was kind of life or death in a way.
Yeah.
So like,
I have a real respect for people that do kind of draw a line in the sand, and they're pretty unflinching or unwavering. Like I guess for me, I would also kind of buy into the mythology aspect of that, because I'm not that way. Like I very much am like, try to bridge the gap, try to do all these things, and like sometimes to a fault, where he can do that to a fault too. But there's something about that I like. I have a deep respect for people that like stand on these like moral grounds and like do what they think is right. I don't know. It's
go ahead. Sorry.
This is nuts to me. So Cato never wrote anything down, right? So how did the Legend of Kato?
You had people like
go.
So that's where
Washington.
that's why I said you have to separate the man from the myth. So you had people like Cicero, right? Cicero wrote a lot, and John Adams emulated Cicero, so he wanted to be a Cicero. He wanted to be the second coming of Cicero. But you also had later authors, when Rome was now an empire, that were kind of trying to showcase the virtue of the republic and everything like that. And Cato was kind of the embodiment of the republic. I don't even think I said that word right, but whatever.
He was the lobotomy.
Lobotomy, yeah. So that's why it's there's stories about Cato that nowadays historians are like, this is probably not true at all. Like when Sulla, for instance, was his dictator, Cato was like 10 or 12, something like that. And he asked his tutor a question like, why do people fear him? And he's like, oh, because he'll kill him. He's like, someone give me a sword so I can free my country from him. That's probably not true. It's the same thing with us today with Washington and the cherry tree. Never happened.
That's the cool thing about it, though, is that representation of that person led Washington to focus more on his deeds and speak less.
Yeah.
So regardless of what he actually did,
well,
it still influenced him.
I think
yeah, dude, I did a backflip on my bike when I was 8. So
you never did a backflip into a foam pit.
Dude, I fucking was doing backflips all the time when I was like 8 on my bike.
Just 8?
Yeah, anyway, so what were you saying?
Well, I think what you were mentioning about Washington putting on the play was, so Cato, when basically the Caesar was won the Civil War, it was kind of a foregone conclusion. Like he beat Pompey, he beat Cato, he beat Scipio, all these Roman commanders, right? So Cato's left with basically a few followers. He reads a book, stabs himself, passes out, wakes up. They're stitching him up and they're saying like, you can't die. You are the Republic. Like you're probably the only person that doesn't have ambitious gains from this, because Pompey and Caesar were basically, whoever won that
was going to become the tyrant.
Yeah. But Cato thought that Pompey was less of a threat than Caesar. Like he thought that he could, probably realistically, a lot of people think that Caesar was smarter than Pompey. That's why. So Cato wakes up, they're stitching him up, rips open the stitches, kills himself. So
that's tight.
Well, the reason why he basically sends the message like, I'd rather, because, and Caesar's famous for offering mercy and clemency, like, forgiving, like, hey, all is forgiven. That's what ended up getting him killed in a way. But
Caesar was forgiving?
Yeah, he would offer mercy to people that fought against him.
But it wasn't really like oh, I'm forgiving and I forgive you. It was more of like a show, right?
It was a lot of political thing behind it. So if you think about it, so Cato and Caesar were political rivals and basically enemies for over a decade now, probably almost 15 years, where Cato was like, he's a threat. while he's conquering Gaul, which is now modern day France, he's like, this is illegal. He's breaking treaties. He's just trying to build up an army. He was raising the alarm bell. Well, by him denying Caesar that mercy offering, it took a lot of political points away from Caesar. And it kind of fueled this legend of Cato, where he basically said, I'd rather die for the Republic than live one day under you.
Did he know about this this guy that you were talking about before, that when there was like a bribe from the Greeks?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the Romans were big into history too. I mean, they because of all the wealth that came in, they started having, pretty serious education, where they would send, guys to Greece and study under philosophers. They'd bring in philosophers to be tutors, a lot of the rich people. But no, when Washington's in Valley Forge, there was a play that came out in I don't know what year, 1710 or something. Washington saw this play I don't know how many times, a bunch. It was his favorite. He loved going to the play. He wasn't a big, he didn't have any education really, compared to Jefferson or Madison or Adams. But he loved this play, and that he put on the play at Valley Forge with his officers. And the message he basically said was, this is our fate if we fail.
Yeah.
We're all going to die.
When the play was literally called Cato.
Yeah.
So all right. So where did the Republic start to fall apart? Why did Rome
almost immediately? Oh, in Rome?
Yeah. Why did Rome fall apart?
I think, I mean, the system of government that they had wasn't made for, an overseas empire. You gotta think it would be if you send a message from Rome to Spain, it might take a while.
Yeah, at least months.
What year was it that it all fell apart?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, Caesar's civil war happened in 48 BC, and that lasted for 2-3 years, and then he was only alive for another 2 years, and he got assassinated, and then immediately, then you had that's where Octavian, who then became Augustus, the first real Roman emperor, kind of came on, and then they fought another civil war. So in a way, the problem with them going into the empire, in a way, someone like Augustus, who was kind of a prodigy, when he took control, he did improve the Roman state. The problem is, if you look at the emperors, a lot of them are psychopaths, and they are kind of crazy in a way. They're not really doing anything about improving the state at all. So I think at the end of the day, what really caused it was just greed in a way. There's something to say. I mean, it's something with any politics. I mean, if you look at ours, it's you get people that start playing a zero-sum game, where it's I'm not, as long as you don't win, I'm okay with losing.
So where do you see that in our stuff today?
Well, we've been trying to pass an infrastructure bill for 10 years now, and both parties have had controls of House and Senate and presidencies, and still there is not an infrastructure bill.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I mean, it could, I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. I would, if the Democrats put forward the same bill that the Republicans probably put forward, how many years ago, 4 years ago or whatever, the exact same thing, exact same wording, whatever, I guarantee you they'll still vote no.
Yeah, well, they just go with whatever the party is doing
they're
at that
playing,
time.
They would play a zero-sum game.
Just because they don't want the other team to win.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they got whatever thing that they're trying to accomplish, and they've got to all be unified, even if it literally makes no fucking sense.
Sounds like they need a little virtue.
Virtue reality.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the I mean, Chris, you were kind of alluding to this though, is like, a lot of the people that were in government, and you notice after the founding generation kind of passed away and moved on, I mean, what happened next? We then basically went into pre-Civil War, where there was a lot of like shitty decisions that were being made, which kind of made the Civil War inevitable.
Yeah. Well, and when people, I didn't realize this, and I'm kind of just gotten to this part of the book, but when they got past, like 1790, like you were saying, it was really tumultuous time, but that was when they were kind of realizing that virtue was hitting its limits, and that's when they started getting into like this partisan type stuff. It's really interesting how that came about, and when you look at some of the things that they're talking about, how similar it is to today. Of they suddenly started making personal attacks on this person and undermining their credibility, their manhood, and all this kind of stuff.
The only thing I will say about that though is the weirdest thing that probably ever happened in American politics is that you have the vice president, Aaron Burr, ends up then shooting Alexander Hamilton.
That's wacky.
Yeah. So
it almost just seems like it's cyclical. Like it's
right?
coming
That's
back,
what I'm
it's
saying.
Like coming back around. There's this, I'll have to look it up later, but there's this saying that it's like we start off as this, and these times create these times, and these times create these times, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's hard times.
You know what it
create
is?
hard men create soft times create soft men create hard times.
Something like that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're in that time now where it's like kind of soft men.
Well,
speak for yourself.
Yeah. I'm just saying in general, and that's I can kind of read that from those.
I think that there needs to be some accountability at the
sure.
top.
I think 1 out of every 3 men is soft.
It's not me. Did you see me knock that water over how hard I hit it?
Yeah.
Actually, now that you mention that, you're pretty dangerous. Actually, you're more like a liability.
You almost ruined the whole show.
I know. We'll cut it out.
Oh, thank you for spilling all this water on the computer that's running the show. I appreciate it.
I didn't get any on the computer. It's fine.
Well, you did, but
we got it taken care of.
Those are the kind of lies that tore the Roman Republic apart.
What Roman Republic?
I don't know.
So, what do you think, Mason? I'm curious to hear this because you're so well versed in all this stuff, and I know you've been studying history for a long time. In this book, he asked the question, what do you think our founding fathers would think of our government today or the presidency? What would they think about these times? And does it even matter?
Is this man awake?
That's a really hard question.
Yeah.
Because I think, if you look at in human history, maybe in the last 200 years, there's been more changes and more advancement than there was in the past, 8,000. There's if you take, say, a Roman soldier from 200 BC and fast forward them to 200 AD, chances are the equipment's not going to be much different. Things like that. If you
That's a good point.
Yeah, George Washington they probably didn't think an airplane was possible or a computer.
Yeah, of course.
I think though that at the end of the day, I believe, and I'm probably wrong about this, but I believe that they thought that the ultimate power resided in Congress. So the thing that I don't think that they would approve of would be, some of the sketchy stuff that our government does, or I would say involvement in overseas. They were kind of isolationist, I would say.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of seeing like now in real time with stuff like Afghanistan that it's not super feasible to be so heavily involved in other people's like countries and all that shit. Like, I know that we're located all throughout the world and we've got different military bases everywhere. We're part of almost like at least half the world's economies and stuff like that. But I don't know. I kind of like appreciate that isolationist view on at least some of the military stuff. I don't know what the consequences were. Like you just said, like it gave rise to Napoleon.
Well, no, so
or maybe like a lack of involvement kind of set the environment that could lead to something like Napoleon.
So realistically, the Revolutionary War, we probably would not have won it. The war lasted 7 years. But the French were a big asset to it. So you kind of had, that's where some of these partisan lines drew. So you had Alexander Hamilton's camp that was kind of all about the economy and trade and all that they wanted to have stronger ties with England. Well, England's the enemy if you're basing it off the spirit of 1776.
Yeah,
right?
If you're still stuck in the revolutionary times. Yeah.
Well, you had Jefferson's camp, and Jefferson was like, loved French. He loved France.
Well, he spent a ton of time over there too.
Well, and then the French Revolution happened, and I think it's 1787. So, and Jefferson actually that's when he was in France. He was helping, he helped them out. And he kind of wrote down some of the stuff that was their foundation. Well, there's a difference between a revolution in North America where you have an ocean to separate some of the European powers and you had England and France that hate each other. Then there's another difference between overthrowing the monarchy in Europe when you are surrounded by monarchies. So France was basically in war from day one when the revolution happened.
From our revolution? Or
from their revolution.
Oh, okay.
Their revolution. Well, that's why it's really important that when a lot of people, they look at Washington's presidency, the biggest thing that they give him credit for is declaring neutrality, saying we're not joining any side in the war, because he knew that there's no chance that, one, we wouldn't really be effective at all. Two, the country was young. It was already fragile. The last thing it needed was a war.
Yeah.
And basically from the French Revolution to the Napoleonic Wars, Europe was at war for 20 plus years.
So what years did the French Revolution happen?
It happened in, I believe it was 1787.
Oh, okay. So this happened like right on the coattails of our revolution. So,
yeah.
And we were in like super turmoil too.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a big U.S. military either that could go over there and really be useful. And plus, if you look at the Fabian approach too, most of our success came from the local militias and stuff going out, pestering, not letting the British rest. But then they would go back to their lives, to their farms, everything like that, and leave. Like, you didn't just have a bunch of people that were like, yeah, ready to jump on a ship and go to France.
Do you know what, though? That's so I'm kind of glad we brought up Napoleon, though. But if you look at who their heroes were, who their inspirations were, Napoleon thought Julius Caesar was the hero of antiquity. So maybe that's why Napoleon realistically is probably the best general ever. I mean, he overstretched himself, but he won the most battles. He fought the most battles, everything. But he modeled himself in a way after Caesar, whereas Washington, Cincinnatus, and Cato were kind of his inspirations. So it's if Washington's inspiration was, say, wanted to be a great military general, which when he was younger, I mean, he liked Caesar. Yeah, he wanted busts of Caesar and everything like that. But that was when, he was younger. I think to your point earlier, people change and maturity comes and all that.
People changes. Yeah, like the fact that you and I sat down and got some beers and talked about Stoicism, like, that conversation 3 weeks ago versus, who you were 5-6 years ago when you were my boss, it's like
probably wouldn't have been the same.
It was entirely different,
No, honestly, for me, I know mean, the whole reason why I'm even here is because I've been reading books so much. I have to thank COVID for that. And I mean, that's a terrible thing to say, but when you're not able to really go anything in the beginning, I was like, you know what? I used to like to read, but
why don't I like reading no more?
I haven't read in a while, so let me start reading.
So COVID sparked your interest in reading again?
Yeah, that's all I ever do now.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, man. I talked about this earlier, but you posted 2 books the other day on Instagram, your rating scale. Where do you find the books that you want to read?
So for my work now, I have to talk to clients, and a lot of them are senior executives at Fortune 500 companies. So if the conversation gets stale, sometimes be like, hey, I'm trying to improve myself. What is a book that impacted you?
It's awesome.
And then sometimes that conversation, it just sparks it up. Or even, sometimes I'll be like, hey, I just read this book and it's, I think it'd be of interest for you. And I recommend it that way. But on the history topic, a lot of authors, like this guy, Thomas, they'll reference stuff at the end. So if they say, for more further reading, or like on Stoicism, Ryan Holiday, I like him a lot.
Yeah.
He'll reference a lot of books, or he'll say, I recommend this if you want to learn more about this.
Well, that's what we were talking about. That's the Daily Stoic guy.
Yeah, love it. That's how I got into Stoicism.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's an awesome idea, because the people that you talk to are typically probably pretty successful.
Yeah,
Mason,
Stoicism gets brought up a lot.
Do you want to be part of our book club?
I'm already in a book club, man.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, you guys don't keep up with my reading.
Honestly, I'm very impressed with the amount of stuff that you know, and it's actually making me realize, with all these cameras and microphones here, just how little I fucking know.
Yo, for sure, yeah.
Well, the other thing too, to your point though, is what do I read and all this stuff, or why do I pick certain stuff? I think that you should read to become a better person or to grow. And I'm actually, or even reread something like meditations. I know when you guys talked earlier, you kind of talked a little bit about Marcus Aurelius, and you had no idea who he was. But hey, that's beyond the point. But
me, I know who Marcus.
I gotta talk a little shit on you guys. But
hey, you know what? Fuck you. I don't want to hear no shit about Marcus Aurelius.
But
that's my great uncle.
Yeah,
it is.
Well, I read it when I was real young, right?
Yeah, real little.
When I was like 21, and I had realistically no idea what I was reading.
You're like, oh yeah, all right, the Muses. All right.
Yeah, that's what's cool, man. Like I know you've been into it a little bit longer than me, but before I got into that, I heard the word Stoicism, but this has opened a whole new world to me, and it's kind of cool because I'm in this part of my life where I can fully grasp it right now.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of glad that I'm just getting into this now. Because I think at 21, I probably wouldn't have cared too much about it.
Yeah. I mean,
I just want you guys to know that when I was 21, I deeply cared about this stuff and fully understood it. So.
Oh, shit. Well, that feels like a long time ago now.
Right?
Yeah.
You getting old.
Oh, yeah. I feel it.
Are you 30?
I am 30.
Oh, boy.
I look like I'm 35, though.
You're washed up.
That's what happens when I have you two as employees for a while.
Dude, one time, so did you know any of the games that me and him would play, while we were working? Like some of the challenges that we would have for each other? So this was like a real moment of desperation. I won't speak for you when you were there, because I know what the situation is.
Was this at the airport?
Yeah. This was at the airport, and I wasn't a stellar employee. Let's just say that. But
you weren't.
No, I wasn't. Especially not at that time. That's why I was on the night shift.
Was I still the manager?
Yeah.
Oh, you actually, you encouraged it.
And so, yeah, you didn't help. And so we would play these games where it was like we had to say certain things. Like that was the challenge. So.
Oh, I remember you idiots doing that.
Yeah. So one time, we were standing up at the front, like both people at the kiosk, and I was like, all right, dude, word of the day is we have to say silly in an interaction with a customer.
Every interaction with every customer.
Every interaction with a customer, you have to say silly at least once. It sounds maybe a little silly. Dude, I recommend if anybody out there listening, if you fucking hate your job and you work in some sort of retail job, do this challenge. It is well worth it. He had to say it to somebody, and I had to duck down underneath and put my head underneath where the printer was and start laughing. And he's like, so, sometimes these cars can, the radios can act a little, the tires can act a little silly sometimes. So you might want to buy this coverage.
Well, dude, when it's 1 o'clock in the morning and you haven't slept and you're with a friend, sometimes you just got to do those things.
Remember the cinnamon rolls?
I will, yes. Chris, this back seats, an Explorer, they fold down. It was cinnamon twists.
Cinnamon twist,
all right,
yeah.
Let's use cinnamon twist out on the lot, and I'm standing across from him, and I hear him folding the seats down, and I hear out of the corner of my ear, "You would not believe it. We found a box of cinnamon twists back here at the last car," and I absolutely lost it.
Dude, the thing that used to piss me off about Chris more than anyone though, working with him. Well, we had a team, right? So as like the team manager, you had to push your people to perform or something. This guy last week would be like dead last, and then he would perform like A+ out of the roof, and I was like, dude, why don't you do this the whole month? And he's just like, I don't know. When are we going to Blue Sushi again?
I didn't realize that Mason was like a mayor of the town. Like I had no fucking idea.
Doesn't exist anymore, man. I'm forgotten news.
Oh yeah,
you're cooped up reading all these books, man.
Yeah.
Well, we're bringing you back. I mean, you look and you seem pretty washed up, but this podcast can be pretty redemptive for you. But we were out drinking and we go to Blue Sushi and he knows the bartender and all that stuff and like I didn't realize that you were like getting like they were going to give you a discount on this stuff and all this kind of stuff. I thought that I was ordering because I was going to pay for it, and he's like, get it, like it's okay, do whatever, and I was like, all right, so I got 2 fucking expensive ass sushi rolls, like we got a bunch of drinks and stuff, and at the end like the bill comes and he like goes and pays it, and I was like, oh dude, were you paying for that? He's like, yeah, dude. It's like, oh man, I'm really sorry. I thought.
Do you know what the funniest thing about those? You probably felt like shit, but like that bill was like $30.
Yeah, but at the time, like $30.
Yeah.
When you're an MT, it was like.
Yeah, when you're just starting off in a career,
no,
man,
$30 for both of us, and we probably had like 2 or 3 drinks each, and you had the 2 rolls of sushi.
That's not terrible.
I felt
that Blue Sushi has closed down, by the way.
I know.
So there might be a reason for it, but
I felt some sort of shame because I felt like I was like getting something over on somebody, and I was like,
Fort Myers was a weird place back then because it was still small enough where I knew everyone, where I was still like very social. So everywhere we went on like a team outing or anything, like
you knew
I
everybody.
Yeah, well, because I got treatment, but
yeah,
but it was I mean, dude, I honestly I'm surprised I didn't get fired from. Were you guys there for when we went to Headpins?
Yes,
there's like 30 people that showed up. I expensed like that whole trip.
Mason, why was this simple outing with a small team $1,800?
It was more than that.
Was it?
Oh yeah. I was surprised I didn't get in a lot of trouble. Well, I got promoted, and I was like, so let's go celebrate. Surprisingly, I got promoted. I don't know why, but I got promoted, and I said let's. I was like, hey team, let's go out and let's go bowling, and then 20 more people from the airport showed up, and so
that's what happens because
when you're Prater.
Yeah, well, because when you're a manager over there, it's not like you would have like, oh, I have my small core team. It's like, and especially at that time, like everybody really liked partying and stuff. So it was like, oh, dude, I hear somebody's doing something. Why don't we go? We might be able to get free food or something.
Yeah, and I remember I
Did you expense liquor that night?
no, I wasn't able to do that. So I would pay for liquor out of my own pocket. I just didn't tell anybody about it at the time because I wanted everyone like.
It's very
You know what? It was
virtuous
only for the
So
immediate
virtuous.
team. It was only for the immediate team.
Yeah, I
Because-
remember you were really big into martinis at Bar Lou.
Dude, martinis are the worst. Did you really? You were into martinis?
A weird time in my life,
Oh,
man. You know, that's when the hair loss started coming in.
Oh.
But
It looks about the same as always looked.
yeah, that's what that place did to me, man.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Mine keeps seeming to get farther forward. I'm trying to push it
I
back.
wish. I might have to go on Rogaine or whatever the latest thing is.
You're going to need to take ass hairs and put it on the top of your head.
That continues to grow. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you get older, it's just the hits keep coming. So what the hell were we talking about before this? Something with
We're
Greeks.
talking about. I mean, yeah, I can
about the
talk about
Romans.
history all day. So, but the one thing I will say
Let's
on
talk
American
about it.
history, who does not get enough credit, is John Adams. So John Adams,
Why?
for folks that don't want to read anything about him, there's an HBO series called John Adams that came out like 2008.
About John Adams?
Yeah, about John Adams. Yeah, surprisingly.
What is it called? John Adams?
Yeah, I think it's John spelled though. Then Adams.
Oh, I think I've seen the one about
like Paul
Jacob Jingleheimer. Yeah, I think his name was as well.
But you know, not only just John Adams, but like the Massachusetts, you know, delegates at like the first Congress or the second Congress, they were kind of pushing the making the push for a stronger response, because when England or Great Britain, whatever you want to say, was
Yeah,
trying
how
to
dare you.
punish the colonies, they
Unbelievable.
yeah, please forgive me. Don't cancel me. Yeah.
When they were trying to punish the colonies.
Yeah, they tried to make an example of Massachusetts in particular because of you know, like the Boston Tea Party and all that crap. Shouldn't say crap, but so that's when basically they turned Massachusetts into martial law, where you had British troops there and they were stationed within houses. They weren't allowed to assemble and nothing at all.
Is that where martial law comes from?
No, it's
okay.
yeah. But so John Adams is really the one that pushed forward to have a stronger response to that. And some people dispute this, but he nominated, say, George Washington for, to command the Continental Army, because that's a political move. Virginia at the time was the strongest colony. It had the biggest population and it was the wealthiest. So it had the most money and the most men. And that's how you fight wars back then. It was all about manpower. And Washington was realistically the only person that had real military experience. But it was basically Massachusetts saying, we see the reality of the situation. It's going to take all of us, and we need the strongest colony to kind of lead the fight. So
This was as the leading up to the revolution.
yeah, so
Okay.
so everyone thinks that, July 4th, 1776, when the Declaration of Independence happened. Well, the war really started in 1775. That's when Lexington Concord happened, the siege of Boston, all that. So Washington is named, and he accepts it too. So you could argue that Washington really put the most on the line at first, because he said, I'll take command. So if all else fails, you could argue, if you're in Congress at the time, you're like, well, I didn't vote for that to happen.
Yeah.
But there's no going around saying you're leading the actual army, if you could call it that. It was basically just militia. But then Adams also helped draft the Declaration. So Jefferson wrote the whole thing, but Adams and Franklin, revised it and reviewed it. Then Adams, went to Paris and Franklin hated him over there, so he got sent back. But then he served in England. He actually helped sign the peace treaty. So, as far as like a resume from like the revolution and service to the country, I would argue there's like, Washington, Franklin, then John Adams. But when we think about John Adams today, we think about kind of a failed president. But one thing that John Adams did, which was a huge credit to today, is after he lost the election to Jefferson for his second term, he stepped down and did not dispute the election, even though it was really close. He stepped down and kind of went away. But, it's something that we have to, it's basically, I mean, look at even today, when do you see, unfortunately, like, Trump disputed the election, which is kind of like the first thing that kind of ever happened really in American history, or I'm sure there's other instances, but recently, look at all the chaos that caused. In the early system, when it was really fragile, Adams stepped down and did not dispute it, didn't try to fight it.
Because he knew that if he was going to fight it, it would be detrimental to...
I think, he did respect Jefferson so much. The issue that they had with each other was that Jefferson was kind of playing politics like how we see it today, where he would, and Adams kind of, they both threw like some shit at each other, but Adams wasn't about party politics in a way. He kind of saw himself as a party of one, even though we consider him a Federalist, but he hated Alexander Hamilton. And Alexander Hamilton was in charge of the Federalist Party, but he straight up despised Alexander Hamilton. So it was like nothing. He didn't want anything to do with him.
Well, it seems like because Hamilton was kind of like the opposite of what Adams was pushing for the whole time leading up to the Revolution and through, and even leading up to the Constitution. Because Adams was kind of like, it seemed like that more like revolutionary type, right? Like he was like pretty railing against the stuff for most of the time, right?
I think it was, and this is where, and something that's a little surprising about Washington was Washington had some pretty thick skin. Not thick skin, thin skin. And a lot of people thought, like, when people started talking shit about him, they were saying that he's a senile old man, that Hamilton's just pulling the strings. Hamilton says something, Washington speaks. He was just kind of the puppet.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's and that's kind of Jefferson was kind of behind some of these attacks. So it was kind of the 1790s were very partisan politics.
This was all in the 1790s.
Yeah.
So it kind of started happening quick then.
Yeah. So that's why Washington was considered indispensable to the Republic, because regardless of, he was above kind of the politics fighting, and he had so much respect from the other members of the government or anything at all that no one was going to go against him at all. But even Jefferson realized, like, Jefferson ran against Adams after Washington resigned.
Stepped down.
Yeah. But Jefferson lost, and he was like, yeah, you can have it. Because he was like, whoever follows this guy it's not going to end well. I mean, even look at,
it's going to be tough.
Even look at in our own modern history, anyone that really follows like a really successful president or a popular president, they have a really tough time and a tough agenda. Usually they inherit a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the nature of the beast, I guess. But it's also kind of hard to, Washington is like, I don't know. If we were a religion, he would be, God, I guess.
Yeah.
In a way. Like, how do you follow that?
This is kind of an abstract question, but so you think about these first four guys, and what would we say there was about 3 million people during that time, mid-1700s?
Yeah.
How many people are in the U.S. today?
330 million, maybe more.
Is that what it is?
Probably more. Yeah.
Think about that. For every 3 million, do you think there's, 4 of those guys that are out there, John Adams, George Washington, like, do you think that those people with those, not same values, but people like them exist in today's world?
I think so.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think so.
Especially like here, like, they follow those values, and we'll never know because those people don't want to get into politics or be.
I think that's the issue, is that it takes nowadays it takes a special creature to really want to get into politics, and I think a lot of them end up just betraying their self.
Yeah, I think it's probably too easy to do that.
This is part of what I wanted to talk to you guys.
Can we take a time out?
You got to pee?
Yeah.
Go pee. Matt and I will run this.
We'll chit chat.
We'll
I had a little
catch up.
spill earlier, so it's
Watch
only
that wire.
natural.
Watch that wire. And then just leave that crack so that way you can come back in. Yeah, you can leave that crack. Dude, this is interesting shit.
Yeah,
I
very interesting.
fucking like this book, man.
I know.
I gotta finish this. I feel like I'm like, fuck, man. I wish I fucking finished it.
I know, dude. Land Mason's so knowledgeable about all this stuff. Even if we would have finished it, it wouldn't have mattered.
Dude, as we're talking, I'm like, dude, I fucking don't know anything about this.
Yeah, we're both idiots.
Well, yeah, we definitely.
You're an idiot. I'm not an idiot.
You're an idiot.
Yeah,
for sure.
Very interesting stuff.
Dude, this is cool. So when he comes back, I want to talk to him about this, because part of what I'm seeing with this here, and this is like with real basic knowledge of any of this stuff, but I don't know if the stuff that you've read is so glaringly like, dude, this shit's going on today.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at, and I'm asking is because like we have, like you said, that however many people there are out there in America, 330 million from 3 million, and these guys back then, we noticed them more because there were so few people, But now with all these people and how much knowledge that we've gained over time, you're telling me that the people that we have in Congress and Senate and all these government, these positions, like those are the people that we have in there?
Yeah.
Everybody that we can choose from. It's just goofy.
No, it is goofy, dude. That's like the question that I'm asking is like, okay, these guys were here, right? And even if you look at Rome, right, that's 2,000 plus years ago, and people were thinking like that. Then it pops up 1,700 plus years later, 1,800, however many years later. Like, we're only 200 something years removed from that. Like, those same kind of people, same kind of mindsets. It's more likely that they're similar to what we were in the 1700s than in ancient Rome.
It's not that long ago. We're closer to that now than they were to ancient. We're closer to them, by ancient Rome.
A long shot. Yeah. But like, what is that? 5, 6, 7, 8 times the length or something like that. Like, we're that 7 times the length, something. Like, there's definitely people out there, but it is interesting because I don't think people want to get into politics. Dude, it's scary to even fucking talk about this shit. Yeah. Like,
I mean, who nobody in their right mind would want to see, everybody wants to see people improve themselves and improve the place that they live.
Watch the wire.
Watch that wire.
Watch that fucking wire.
Watch the water cup.
Watch the water. Don't spill the water. So,
how was it?
Yeah, how was your pee-pee? It was one of the best pisses I've ever had.
TMI.
So we were just talking while you were gone.
Oh.
Controversial?
Controversial?
No.
It's been a good run for you, but the world's about to watch you get murdered.
So we'll ask you your opinion on this. So with all these people out there, what do you think, honestly, why do you think that we have the people in place in politics that we do and not people like, I don't know. I don't have an example, but
who would want to go into politics?
Well, that's what I'm asking. With all your knowledge and all this stuff, I'm just saying, what do you think it is?
That wants to go into politics? Or that's in there right
these
now?
These great men that have gone into politics before us, like we were just talking, like we're so far removed from, these guys were so far removed from Rome. We're closer to those presidents than they were to Rome.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, these types of people have to still be out there, but they're not getting into.
I think nowadays, not to put some of these guys on a pedestal. I mean, for instance, you say George Washington, you're like, well, he owned slaves. Okay. That's an unfortunate thing, but you also have to look at the good that, he did, and still it needs to be held up as a model for some of the things that he did. Like, okay, he's the only person realistically in American history that probably could have taken power like Napoleon did if he really wanted to.
Yeah.
He had the loyalty of realistically every person in the country. The army was loyal to him, and the government. He could have done whatever he wanted to. And what did he try to do? When he had the army, first thing he did when the war was over, he went to Congress and surrendered his commission.
This is Washington?
Yeah, this is Washington. So, again, that's his like
the calling
riding off into the sunset, his calling card. Like, that's his first retirement that he tried to do.
Mic drop.
Yeah. So it was nowadays I mean, even if you like read some of their writing or some of the stuff that they said or their viewpoints on topics, and then fast forward to our most recent two presidents, I mean, I feel like an idiot listening to both of them talk. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I don't really care anymore. Like,
yeah,
like I know Biden has a speech impediment. I get that. I also have a little bit of a speech impediment. I get that, but at the same time,
I'm sorry, I can't.
Some of the stuff he says, though, it's like, dude, what are you talking about? And then Trump, when he was saying stuff, he's like, "It's gonna be great. It's the best ever." It's like,
it's gonna be huge.
What is?
It's gonna be huge, South Florida. It's gonna be huge.
He was a hype man. It was just.
It's a good way to put it. Actually,
yeah.
Come in if you still a key. Get yourself a cruise.
Dude, R.I.P. man. That guy.
Passed away.
Died. Billy. Yeah. R.I.P. But
rest in
oh,
peace.
Norm Macdonald died.
Yeah,
I saw that too.
Did die.
I heard that.
Yeah.
That sucks, man. He's fucking funny.
Yeah.
I didn't even know he had. I mean, I guess it was a secret. He had cancer.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Guys, I don't know if anybody told you this, but I got cancer.
It's nuts, man. The same thing with the guy that played Black Panther.
Yeah.
No one said a word, and then they just passed away from cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing, man. Feel like to go through by yourself and
take some balls.
Oh, for sure, man.
Be like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you guys.
By the way,
Peace.
Yeah.
Well, and that's I mean, it's a sad situation on all of them.
Yeah.
So the kind of questions that I have on this too is like we were just talking about when you were taking a little pee-pee was was like even on a quick pass through this. I'm only a little more than halfway through this, right? But a lot of this stuff is sometimes scarily reminiscent of what I'm seeing today. Like, this does not seem there's nothing in this book that I'm reading that I'm like, oh my God, I can't fathom a time in the world when things were like this. It's like, fuck, dude, is like this is like history like repeating itself or history rhyming, I should say. But like these people were able to look at a situation where they're being really treated unfairly, even if that's only in their own minds. And they were able to go through some really hard times that it took to do it, but they were able to break out of this, create a country that really had never been created before. We've got a lot of flaws, yes, but like you said, in the past 200 years, the innovation that has come has been staggering, and we have been a big driving force for that innovation. Like, a lot of this does come from these types of ideas that came out of this, but it does come down to like being free and having that autonomy to do this stuff. And it's not just freedom. It is really setting up the world to be like kind of the best possible place that you can make it at that time. So like the world seems pretty fucked up right now. Like how do we take some of these same things without having a fucking revolution and like incorporate this and try to make things better for people and set the next 250, 300 years in like a positive motion?
So the other thing,
answer it now.
Well, to go back to an earlier question he asked is like, how did the Roman Republic fall? Right?
And it feels like we are
the
in
reason
that zone.
why it ultimately fell was that you had enough people that didn't believe that the system worked anymore. That whether or not they could be protected by it, that everyone would be playing fair. It's the same reason with ours too. Yeah. So if you had Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, any president in the first, say, 50 years, basically, or, just go like, this system doesn't work. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. Or, circumnavigate certain things. But because they made the certain decisions that they did, it was allowed to grow and be established. The problem that I would say today that we lack is that we don't understand enough about why they made certain decisions or what influenced them. If you look at human history or even human nature, you have to understand why certain things exist. So, like, a good example is the Bill of Rights, right? The controversial one, the Second Amendment, right to bear arms. Well, the reason that exists is because when they founded it, they were not expecting us to be the military power that we are today. It was still a small country in today's standards, like the United States today.
Yeah.
And, there was hostile Native American tribes. There was still colonial empires from European powers. The goal was, if an issue was to arise, the militia could rise up and that they were self-trained. It was a citizen army. Same thing as how it was in ancient Rome. That was the theory behind it. At least my understanding of it. Now, fast forward today, does that mean I think everyone should own a M16, assault rifle? That's a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to understand the purpose behind it. And sometimes it was a distrust in standing armies also. Because when you have a standing army, you have a lot of influence. So, like
in the society,
yeah,
that army would be protected.
Yeah. So if we had if there was let's take the Marine Corps, for instance. If there was 500 Marines in downtown Fort Myers, would you protest against the government?
More than likely, no.
So it kind of curbs that a little bit. Yeah. So that's why when the British occupied Boston to kind of send the message to nip it in the bud, it didn't disunify the colonies. It actually united the colonies to be like, hey, that's fucked up. We're not about that. Mm-hmm. So, and that's why the Constitutional Convention, all that stuff started happening.
I want to rewind real fast. You said George Washington. Explain that again. He was kind of riding off into the sunset. So
when the Revolutionary War ended, and the peace treaty was signed, one of the first things he did was he went to Congress and surrendered his commission, saying, I'm giving up my power to Congress, the government.
Dude, see, this is what I think is a problem today, is that people are so self-absorbed that they don't know when to step down and when to hand off the baton to the next person.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
I can't think of anybody that would, make an accomplishment like that and be like, okay, I know now that my role is done, and I think that if I continue on the path that I'm on, that I'm not going to do any more good than I've already done. I think it's time for this person to step in. You think like dictators, the same deal. Yeah, you get someone in a place of power, and it's like, and I get it. You all of a sudden you're in charge of all these things, and it's going to eat away at you, and you're going to have a different viewpoint of yourself and the people that you should be serving. That's another problem.
I mean, if you look at Napoleon, for instance, before he invaded Russia, I mean, he was basically in control of all of Europe except Great Britain.
Yeah.
If he didn't invade Russia, he probably could have stayed in power for the rest of his life.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he invaded Russia with like 600,000 men, and only 30,000 of them came back.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it 600,000?
About, yeah.
Jeez, man.
And all Russia did was just
Scorched earth.
Yeah, they just kept on retreating further into Russia, and you got to think this is like 1812. So
the cars were like barely
freezing, dude.
So when free and everything relies on horses, you know, so if the horses die, you can't get food to the soldiers or anything like that. And, you know, diseases run rampant and all sorts of crazy crap. But yeah, you know, if he didn't do that, I mean, it might be a different world that we're in.
So like how do we take some of this stuff and like incorporate it into day-to-day life? Like for me, the way that I'm trying to do this stuff, and this could be maybe why I like Jefferson, because like for me, I don't have the answer to that. I don't know how we could take some of this stuff and like make sure that we're like protecting it. But the way that I'm trying to do it is to be as authentic as I can be, and like say what I think is wrong and like try to push back on this stuff. But I also don't want to be this divisive. I genuinely have a concern that like our country, really our world right now, is like not that fucking far from this kind of stuff. I know we're structured differently and things are more interconnected, which is actually fucking great to avoid something like this. But like people are pretty divided right now. I know that they may have been more divided in like 1790 and things like that. Maybe the consequences were greater, but like that kind of shit does scare me. And I don't like that people now, at least in the media and stuff, like are very divisive, and we're kind of losing sight. I think that most people are pretty similar and want very similar things, to be safe, to be free, to do all this stuff. But like, I don't know, I feel like we're losing sight of it. And the only way that I can kind of figure out maybe how to do that now is to be as much of myself as I can and school myself up on this stuff. But I don't know what it means.
And that's what I was just going to say. I think the only thing that we can do is try and understand why things are the way they are and get a better feeling for why are the Bill of Rights the Bill of Rights? Why is the Constitution the Constitution? What influenced them? What is why it passed the way it did? What is so important about the Declaration of Independence? What is really the founding document of this country? Because they're not the same. At the end of the day, the wording is completely different. But I think it kind of starts with, what does it mean to be a good citizen? Or even then, it's a philosophical. What does freedom really mean? What is freedom?
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer that. But to be a good citizen, I think it means, what are you really voting for? Do you know who you're voting for? In my opinion, I think the most important vote that you can cast is actually for your local congressperson, because they're supposed to be your representative in the federal government, because Congress is supposed to have realistically a majority of the authority as far as what happens.
And I don't know anything about my Congress people or anything like that.
So for example, the latest thing, Biden signs an executive order for the mandate, right? That's not a law.
Yeah.
If he dies tomorrow, Kamala becomes president, she could write another executive order making that disappear. It's not a law.
Yeah.
But there's things like the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. That is a law that was passed through Congress and signed by Obama. That is a lot harder to overturn. It basically has to be repealed in Congress. A new president, say you get elected as the Republican president, next year, whatever, next election. You can't just go in there and say, I'm getting rid of this.
Yeah.
It has to go through Congress.
Yeah.
So ultimately, though, I think it kind of needs some of the stuff that's going on right now. It does need to get back to how the country was founded, where I know, and a lot of people think Congress doesn't do anything. They don't get anything done. That's also part of the reason why it was set up that way.
Yeah.
Is to not have these off the hip or these emotional reactions. It was supposed to, let's debate the issue, vote on it, all these things. But now you just see, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about the infrastructure. People are just going to vote on, it could be the exact same fucking bill. Well, because the Democrats put it forward, I'm not going to vote for it. Or because the Republicans put it forward, I'm not going to vote for it. It could be the exact same freaking thing. Or it could be a law that says, we're going to recognize that the sky is blue. Well, no, I'm not going to sign with that because you put it forward. You know, it's kind of stupid. So I think part of it is you kind of need someone to transcend it a little bit or push forward. And I think what you're referring to is some people need to, have a ride off into the sunset moment themselves.
But they don't want to. I think that's kind of your point, right? Is like there's a lot of people that have been there, they're entrenched, like
they want the power, they want the
money that comes with it, all of that stuff.
And I don't even know if it's so much money. I feel like these guys
It's a lot.
It is 95. It's 90% money
If it's not for them, it's for family members.
All right.
Like take Chelsea Clinton. What the fuck does she do? She's a millionaire.
Look at the Hunter Biden stuff with like.
Yeah, he's a millionaire.
Did you buy one of his paintings?
Yeah, I did actually.
Hang it up.
Or even
dude, I smoked crack with Hunter Biden. Actually, I mean, fuck, we're gonna beat this up.
But just to be fair, I mean, it's both sides though.
Dude, it's totally both sides. That's why this is where so this is what I think is happening, right? The government. No, dude, I think what's happening is that this is why I'm asking these questions, because you have people that thought like this not too long ago, right? There's still people that think like this, that want to do the right thing, but they think that by taking part in this bigger fight about what's going on, what is right, the right thing to do, all these kinds of things, we end up fucking fighting each other. But that's what I'm coming back to is most people probably, if you really sat down and actually talked about some stuff, you'd probably come to the conclusion, okay, maybe we agree on 70% of the stuff, maybe we agree on 90%, but we entirely disagree on the way to get there. What we're seeing now that maybe they were seeing at the same time is that you've got these people that do have positions of power, whether it's government, whether it's these bigger businesses, whoever it might be, that aren't taking part in our conversations. They're like manipulating our conversations, because nobody that disagrees with each other, like at least not since online is the biggest forum, nobody's having not many people are having rational discussions about this stuff. It is very divisive. It's very hate driven. Like, just look at the news channels. It is literally it's a comedy show at this point. Like, yeah, it's something that you would write of like, oh, okay, so like here's what we're gonna put that the Democrats are gonna say, and then here's what we're gonna put that the Republicans are gonna say about them, and then let's just go. And it's like a skit that's unfolding. Like, I feel like stuff like this is some of the ways that as regular people we can start to kind of take back the sovereignty of our own minds and start making up these decisions for ourselves. Learn that we're not alone in this feeling. Like, people have been here before. There's people that have done stuff about it, but just like kind of Madison did, of looking at history and then doing something new and better and revolutionary. Like, maybe we can do this without fucking revolution.
Yeah, even then he compromised a lot on it.
That's what it's going to come down to, is like, you do have to compromise.
Well, the other thing
people are living.
The other thing too is the age of them when they did this stuff. So
pretty young guys.
Madison was in his late 30s when the Constitutional Convention happened. Jefferson was in his young 30s when he wrote the Declaration. I mean, like I said earlier, Washington was, I think 43 when he was in the Constitutional as the general. Benjamin Franklin was the old man of the group, and he was arguably, let's be real, probably one of the smartest humans, maybe not ever, but
up
I put him in the top 100, or
sure.
something like that.
That stuff that flashes in the sky.
Yeah,
I think I'll take a crack at it.
Yeah. But I, to your point, Chris, I think part of it is that a lot of people I think so many people, they don't know how to have a conversation with someone that has an opposing viewpoint, or even if we agree on 8 out of 9 things or 8 out of 10 things, let's say 80%, you're going to focus on those two. And so much of the conversation, I mean, it turns on how am I going to win that argument on that too versus, hey, we all can agree that maybe schools need more funding. Like, oh, okay, all of us agree on that. Well, why don't we do something? Why don't we focus on that one thing first? And I think to go back way earlier, what you said about what does need to be happen today. If you look at some of these freaking bills that they've been passing in Congress, where, you know, let's take the COVID relief bill. It's $5 trillion. Well, if you start breaking it down, you'll find out maybe there's like $100 million to the JFK Art Center, or like, you know, it's like weird stuff like gender studies in Pakistan, or like weird, like stuff like where it's like,
the fuck does this have to do with COVID?
Yeah, you can go on the federal website, I think, and see how those are all broken down, right?
Yeah, you can read the bills, but the other problem is
it's
that
in plain sight.
If they give it to them, if they're gonna do a vote that day and you're a congressperson, they give it to you 6 hours before the vote and it's 1,000 pages, you're not gonna be able to read it at all. You might just then say, well, what's in this? And then your party leader was like, just vote for it. It's our bill.
I feel like it's
interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because it almost feels like people, I feel this way, but like, it's like you don't really have a choice. You have A or you have B. Like we're put in a box now, where these guys back then, they had the creativity and they were able to think in different ways. Now it's like you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, and you can't think what they think and you can't think what they think, and if you do, you're opposing sides and it's treason. It just seems like...
No, they definitely had that, though, because you had like the Tories and the people that supported it and all this kind of stuff. Like, well, we support this. Like, how could you want to secede from the British Empire?
I'm not saying that it didn't exist, but they, like you said, I think their ability to compromise more was...
I don't know, because they really had to go through like severe bloodshed, and like when they went through some of this.
Chris's point, so that's the thing that we have to be careful of, is that if we idolize them too much, like Jefferson and Adams didn't talk to each other for like 10, 14 years after, you know, Adams was president, because of the political differences that they had. And if you look past before that, for like 30 years, they were like the awkward couple, like, you know, that partnership that they had. But, you know, they did have some serious like political fighting.
Yeah, because Days was fucking and then something happened.
Strange.
But no, it's
I guess when you look at it that way,
No, that's a good point of like not idolizing some of this stuff. That's what I like about this, because it takes it away from that idyllic piece of it and kind of brings it into reality of like, no, people were going through this. This is why I say I'm afraid that that's the direction of the country, of the world right now. And maybe it is more world based, or maybe it's more like the economic tier of the country based, you know, because like I'd say I feel like we're very similar to us, the UK, Australia, like maybe there's some other countries on the list, but like similar like economic or like philosophical countries. We're almost kind of united. Like you watch, this might sound really stupid, but like you can watch videos on YouTube of people in England or in Australia, or you could do online business with people there, and like they just seem kind of like a different kind of American, you know, like it's like, oh, you know, they're kind of similar, but
it's a shared language and culture and Western norms.
Sure. I guess I'm fucking rambling, but the point is like, when you look at this stuff, like we're not that different than the group of people that went to fucking war and had a really fucking bloody and brutal way of dealing with this stuff. And I don't want to go that route. You know, like
I don't think there'll be a major war anytime soon, personally. I think at the end of the day, there's so much money, and everyone, even me, I like China is a danger, but
Did you say Cheine Productions?
China.
Cheine.
China.
But if you look at how much money gets passed between our country and their country, and how economically tied both of them are, a war on any sort of scale would be idiotic.
So stupid.
Yeah. But the one thing I will say, which is there's probably a lot of crap that we don't even know about that happens on the other side of the world that is like, okay, why is this happening? Like, if you look, I mean, we have bases in like 100 different countries, for instance. What's to say if a CIA squad goes in there and wipes out a village or something like that? Like, we probably don't even know about that. But fast forward 20 years, then you got some guy who leaves a bomb in college or something, and you start looking into it, and you're like, well, where is this place? Like, I know we were all kids when 9/11 happened, but did we have any idea what the hell Afghanistan was?
No.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing, and again, now I'm rambling. The one thing I will say is that our generation is probably the last one that will actually remember seeing 9/11 actually happen. And now you have to kind of take the mantle of educating people as far as why that happened, or how this was what happened, and XYZ, and kind of going into that. Because think about us growing up, Pearl Harbor, this happened on this date, which we then went to World War II.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
They didn't talk about anything else besides like what happened before, anything like what caused Japan to bomb Pearl Harbor. It's stuff like that gets glossed over. So, yeah.
But what I'm saying even is like the way that we're set up now with like, isn't it, you always hear the saying like taxation without representation, that type of thing was maybe the main sentiment that led to the revolution and things like that. I mean, you had a power structure that was far away, that didn't view these citizens as like the same as their citizens. It was like a colonial takeover. Like, I don't feel like we're very well represented in our country today. Like I personally look at all the stuff that's going on, and it's like, dude, who are these people? Like, who even is, like, I would just say Nancy Pelosi because I only know really of her. The fucking Republicans are just as bad. This isn't like leftists suck. It's like, but when you're in the middle of a pandemic and your move is to go on a Zoom call on a late night talk show and show everybody your ice cream drawer and tell everybody, like, dude, it is literally like I'm watching like a scene from the Hunger Games or something.
Absolutely.
Like when everybody's fucking hair is blue and all this stuff, and they're doing like all this crazy shit. Like it's such disconnection from reality. And then you have most of the country, what's the average? Like, doesn't even have $500 in their bank account. Yeah. You have a bunch of people that have fucking student loan debt that got sold this bill of goods that you're going to go to college, you're going to make all this money, and then you get out and they're like, here's a call center job. Yeah. It's going to be $33K. Have fun, dude. You're like, okay, should I just fucking kill myself or should I try to pay this back?
Well, it depends on how you look at human progress.
What do you mean?
So if you're a globalist, right? The last 20 years, you could argue that you've helped increase almost 1 billion people into the middle class by the economic growth and production that China and India have done. So if you're a globalist, now what we're talking about is an American aspect. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we have more debt. I mean, younger people, so like millennials, for instance, have more debt than anything else. And the other thing that a lot of people aren't really talking about is there's a declining birth rate also. So what happens when you aren't producing enough humans to refill society? Society starts degressing. And that's actually the so you have to have like, I think the number's like it has to average out to like 2.1 or 2.2 kids per couple.
Until you just said that, I watched a documentary. I don't know what it was called, but it was about how the world is almost somehow, somewhere, as humanity, we're just understanding that we need to have less kids. But when you say it that way, that opens up a different world. Yeah,
it depends on which part of the world.
like environmentally,
Yeah,
they're saying humanity. There's too many humans.
yeah.
There's too many of us to support everyone with the amount of resources that we have.
Well, it's there's some pretty scary projections where like by 2030, like a quarter of the population's not going to have drinkable water. And if you want to talk about war, I mean, people would literally probably kill each other for water.
Or you would die. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that's the kind of weird stuff if there's not a focus on it or a solution that comes to play. But to your point though, Chris, I mean, I believe in capitalism, but I don't think capitalism should be allowed to run wild.
Yeah.
To the best, the issue I have is that if you take a company like Google, for instance, or Apple, if they have a dominant market share, but if they use their domination to stifle or buy out the up and coming, product, that is limiting, say, innovation. Like Facebook, for instance. I don't know anyone that really uses Facebook anymore. How it was before. But what did they do? They bought out, say, Instagram, for instance.
WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They bought all these other things. Or Google. Google's main profit is digital advertising.
Yeah.
They don't make any money from being a search engine. That's a free thing. But go on YouTube. What are you going to get every time you open up a video?
Ads.
Ads. That's it.
Yeah. So I think the main lesson from today is that you're starting your own online business or what?
Me?
Wow,
Oh,
awesome.
I wish. Maybe.
No, but so like
Not smart enough.
I guess just as we're kind of wrapping this up, like the reason why I asked these questions and that out of water by 2030 was not something that I had known about, so I'm gonna try to look into that. But
Look at some of the weird shit that's going on in Central
I
Asia.
feel like I
man.
learned a lot of stuff this evening.
so like, all right, so what I'm trying to get out of this here too is how do we move forward and try to fucking make this like a better place? Like what can we do to get, I guess that is like try to keep your head out of these fucking stupid ass arguments and these stupid ass like things that people just say in the news and all this stuff, and try to figure out solutions to move forward. And maybe you got to look at history. You got to look at what's really going on in the world to do that. I'm speaking out of somebody that's not really doing this right now. So I'm just almost trying to talk through this as like my own plan, but like, yeah, like how do we take stuff like this and avoid a fucking bloody revolution and make the world a better place?
I think what's important to look at is when you're studying history is you're not looking for like the gospel or anything like that.
Yeah.
You're looking at lessons that they did. What can you learn from this individual? What can you learn from their mistakes? How would you handle that? Like another reason why a lot of historians like John Adams is that the stuff that he left behind, like if he was reading a political science book or a pamphlet, he would write down his arguments against things he didn't agree with. So if he was, say, reading a hypothetical, if the Declaration was written when he was, say, like 60 years old, his copy of it would have his notes on the side on the things that he disagreed with. So that's why a lot of historians like his work or his letters or anything like that. Anything that he read, he was kind of like a bulldog where he would kind of go right at it and be like in your face in his arguments. So he would write down like that's why a lot of historians like it, and
Very
that's why
personalized piece of history.
But I would just say, like, try and get your lessons from there. I think a lot of the problems with today, a lot of people, is that we are overly connected to a lot of things. I mean, it seems like there's a social media for every little thing. You have to have all of them. You have to check them all the time. You have tweets, that notifications, all this stuff. What helps me out, and hopefully no one from work watches this, but I mute all my stuff. So I actually have to make a conscious effort to go check my email. I have to make a conscious effort to check my pings at work. If I have a meeting that cancels in that 30 minutes, I'm not going to diddle down around. I'm going to read, okay, my client is talking to me about AI. What can I learn about that? Okay, this news article just came out. Let me read that for 15 minutes so that I can have a better conversation with my client.
Yeah, because I have that overwhelm too, and I feel like there's so much information that I can't keep track of it, and I never not have a feeling of feeling drowned.
If you read the next
Overwhelming.
The next books I'll give you guys is
For the book club.
For the book club, if you guys
The book club.
The book club.
There's
There's 2 books: Deep Work by Cal Newport.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
And then there's another book that came out, I believe, last year. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear.
You told me to get that one,
Yeah,
and I totally just ignored it because Matt gave it to me or recommended.
I probably got it from the Prater Instagram.
Maybe.
Oh, that could be because you sent it a while ago. And what I do is when you make book recommendations, I just say no. I take them, I type them into my.
See if I send you
I
any
type
more
them into my phone
recommendations,
tab,
buddy.
and I leave it as like a tab, so that way when I scroll through that like 4 months later, I find it. But Atomic Habits and Deep Work.
Deep Work. Deep Work is all about, if you're going to do one thing, you focus on that one thing. So, if you plan your day out by using your calendar, right, on, say, Outlook, if 9 to 10 is for you to, say, read on business management or website development or advertisement, you spend that full hour reading on that. You're not checking your email. You're not looking at your phone. You're not put it in the other room. That's like kind of, this is the gist of the book, is like focus on what you're doing on that time that you allocated for it. If you want to watch or attend a TED Talk or something like that for, say, 2 hours, turn everything else off and watch that for the 2 hours. And then maybe the last hour of your day, check your email, check your phone, check all that stuff. Because all that, I mean, time gets away from you when you're doing that kind of that monotonous, I shouldn't say monotonous, but like.
It gets monotonous.
Yeah.
Well, and it also becomes a time suck. You don't focus on anything, so all of a sudden it's like a bunch of little fucking holes in your shit.
Yeah.
And on top of it, now you have your computer open. There's a billion things that you can be looking at or should be doing. You're getting phone calls, so just everything's take you away.
Yeah. It's all about being focused on one thing at the time. That's it. And then the Atomic Habits is all about just, I would say the gist of that one is just 1% increases. So how are you going to improve 1% day over day? And the phone is honestly the biggest distraction.
The Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
You're talking about?
Yeah. That was my biggest takeaway from it, is just 1% increase day over day. How are you going to improve 1%? So if you want to become a better reader and you say you don't have time, okay, well, you know what? Set 10 minutes aside one day. Read for 10 minutes. Might be like, say, 4 pages of a book. Okay, well, you read 10 minutes. It's like, you know what? 10 minutes wasn't so bad. Maybe I'll read for 15 minutes tomorrow. You read for 15 minutes. Then becomes 30 minutes, an hour, whatever. Or it could be, and he gives a thing about, like, I think his example was push-ups. So if you want to do 100 push-ups, you're not going to start with 100. You know what? Start today off with doing 5. 5 is too easy. Tomorrow, do 10. Then just start working your way. Just continue to improve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's the main lesson. Just do more push-ups.
Yeah. Start with 5, go to 10.
Cool.
I mean, I can't do 10.
You can't do 10 push-ups?
Yeah, you can.
Matt watched me work out. You can tell.
Dude,
You could do fucking
Mason's
10
pretty strong.
push-ups.
He's lying. Mason could probably do 12 push-ups.
12?
Yeah, I have to use my knees.
Girl push-up. You getting pinged?
Yeah, yes.
Well, I guess we gotta fucking cancel
boys.
this episode because we had a phone ring.
I apologize.
Spilled water.
My-
Spilled water.
Spilled water. My phone's dinging off. I
He had to take a potty break in the middle of it
Mason
too.
had to go pee.
Gotta go pee
What
pee.
a mess.
All right. Well, thanks for doing this, guys.
Yeah,
No, this was
appreciate
cool.
it. It was awesome. Yeah, Mason,
Yeah, let's do
learned a
this
lot,
again.
dude. For sure. Yeah,
All right.
cool.
Thank you, everybody.
Adios.
Have a good night.